Welcome back everyone, Mr. Allen here. I'm going to make one last attempt at making sure everybody has a pretty solid idea of kind of what goes on a day-to-day basis in class. When you first log in, this is what you should see, more or less at least. I'm logged in right now as a student, so it should be very similar. As I scroll down here, so when I first get in, I saw that. I scroll down. This activity feed will soon be gone. I left it in there only because I wanted to make sure anybody who had been using the Pulse app knows not to do so anymore. The Pulse app does not allow you access to everything that the regular website does, so get out of the Pulse app if you are using it. Continuing to scroll down now, this is again what will be at the top of your screen eventually. And first thing I note right off the bat, updates tells me I've got 3 quizzes that I've not yet attempted. So if I see that and I realize that 3 quizzes is more than maybe should be reasonable, I can click on it. It'll take me to the quizzes section, and of course I can see which quizzes I have not yet attempted. I can see when they will basically close, and if I haven't yet made the attempts, I can do so fairly quickly to make sure that I get through them. Now the one thing I want you to note here, when you have multiple attempts at a quiz, the intent is not for you to make 2 or 3 attempts in a row really quickly in succession. The idea is that you make your first attempt, take it like a proper quiz, make a real effort at writing it like a quiz, and then you will see which questions you got wrong. Ask about it. Either look them up, ask a friend, or contact me and find out why they're wrong. You can send me a screenshot in chat through chat in Teams. That's probably the best bet. If that doesn't work for you, then you can send an email. Certainly that's possible as well. But the idea is that you want to figure out why you're not getting the right answers, and you're not just trying to then hopefully get the similar question that you can guess at correctly next time. These checkpoint quizzes are not worth very many marks. We'll see that in a minute. But they're meant to make sure you understand these are fundamental concepts I need to know moving forward. And if you're not making proper attempts at them and not learning what you're supposed to be learning, then getting a few marks on the quiz is really pretty useless. A lot of these questions I will reuse later on in bigger tests or bigger quizzes. And so you want to make sure you've got these fundamental ideas down, either because, again, they may show up later on anyways, or you may actually see a very similar question on something that's worth more marks later on. So that's kind of the main idea there with the checkpoint quizzes. So far I've noticed people are just kind of, there are some people who made 3 attempts within about 5 minutes, and of course that's pretty much as useless as anything can be. In the end, you'll have 15 or 16 of these. They might be worth about 1% each on your final grade. And so getting 3 out of 4 or 2 out of 4 is absolutely no difference. But understanding what's there and being able to use it later on will be much more valuable. So just continuing down here. So that's the updates. If you do want to send me a message in chat, and you probably end up at this screen here. Now again, this isn't going to be too valuable other than if I schedule meetings for tutorial sessions, but the chat kind of off to the left here is what you're looking at, and basically if you click on the chat button, you can send a message to Matt Allen. If you send me a message in chat, you can attach a picture, and then I can basically mark up the picture. So here's an example of something somebody sent me. The actual solution that they wrote was correct, but I kind of marked it up just to show you. I can circle areas, I can mark off what it should be, I can indicate where there were mistakes, so I can sort of give you feedback immediately on your actual assignment. Okay, so that's why I sort of suggest Microsoft Teams is the best way to contact me. So besides that, I've added the calendar feature now to your home page. Again, because it sort of shows when things are ending, specifically with respect to the checkpoint quizzes. Bigger assignments will be pretty obvious, and I don't think we'll ever have to worry about people not knowing when they're due. but the checkpoints I tend to leave open for a few days. And I was hoping people would get at them a little quicker than maybe they did. So maybe putting deadlines in will make it will be more helpful that way. Of course, if I have announcements, and I'll usually make announcements a couple of times a week, they'll be off to the right here. The date will be showing. Obviously, if you haven't looked at one of these things, that's already an announcement that's already there from previous days, make sure you do so. This one, for example, checklist added, just sort of tells you that I've added the checklist feature at the top so that we can see the minimum requirements for each section. I'll go to that in a moment as well. And this was the one section that I intended to be pretty much the only thing we used. But again, it seems like people were either missing it or ignoring previous days if they weren't on, or something else. I'm not too sure what was going on there, but it sort of gives you a day-by-day idea of what I would suggest should be done on each day. So section 1.2, for example, there's a day 1, there's a day 2, there is a day 3. If we go into it, we will see right at the top it sort of says permutations. It's a 3 days worth of work in my mind, but of course that means I expect you to be working all 3 of those days in order to put that time in. I guess I haven't said it yet specifically in this section, but the idea of these e-learning courses is that they are regular courses. You have essentially an hour and a half, or say an hour and 15 minutes worth of work posted on a daily basis, and the assumption is that you are logging in every single day and doing an hour and 15 minutes worth of work, just like you would in a regular class. Now I know, of course, sometimes you're going to miss class. It just means that you're now behind and you have to try to catch up somehow. I say that knowing that the amount of work that I post on a daily basis probably isn't really the full 75 minutes, though depending on how strong a math student you are, you may take the full 75 minutes or possibly even longer sometimes. Some students will finish in maybe 50 minutes, some people may even finish a little quicker, others may take an hour and a half to kind of get through the day's work. Now I say that as well, and kind of just going on to classwork, understand that your classwork is your regular classwork, just like, again, if you were sitting in front of me in a regular classroom. And so I'm not collecting the daily work, the practice exercises and so on. So if you open up this permutations problem set 1, for example, and you get through questions 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, maybe you got stuck on 4 and you didn't get a chance to try 7 and 8, that's not really a problem. But you do need to understand that I'm assuming you've seen those questions, and so I may give you something later on that's pretty similar to this as a concept. And so if you're not doing the majority of the work, you will be missing out, and you will maybe not be as well prepared as you could be otherwise. Now I should say also, I guess, that every time I post something, I will always post answers with it, or potentially full solutions depending. So when you see this practice exercise problem set 1, continue to read through, see what else is there. Here I've got a couple of questions that I solved on YouTube, just so that you can sort of see me going through the process, and then basically full solutions here, not maybe perfectly written, but full solutions nonetheless. So those are your answers at the top, and then kind of the breakdown of how they were found more or less for all the other parts. The one thing to note with section 1.2, I wrote it in one of the announcements, it is the most important section in the entire course. It is the fundamental concept of the entire course. We're going to be building on it in the next section, and then in 2 of the later units it'll be a big part of those as well. And so the reason I assigned you 3 days to work on it was because I wanted to make sure you spent a good 3 days working on it to make sure you had these fundamental concepts down, because it is the very, again, basis of everything that we're going to see. So just sort of, I guess, to emphasize there, if I do give you multiple days on a topic, it's not because I ran out of work to give you. I have the entire course pretty much ready to go. I'm giving you 3 days because I want you to spend 3 days, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours working on this to really get a good idea of how these questions are to be done. With the permutations and with probability type questions that we'll see later on in particular, every question is a little different, and so the more questions you cover, the better off you'll be. I didn't give you 7 or 8 questions there that were all identical. I gave you 7 or 8 questions that are kind of real world problems that are slight variations of each other, each of which has to be solved in a slightly different way. And so, more than any other math course you've ever seen, every question you see now requires you to do some thinking, to do some problem solving. And so you need the more practice in this course than any other course you've ever seen. So that's basically kind of the day-by-day breakdown. Now again, I did set up checklists here, so I'll go to the checklist. At the top, in case anybody doesn't know, each of these is leads us to a different spot in the course. The content is where all the work is, so all those links that led you to section 1.2 and so on can also be found under content. The assignment Dropbox is where you will hand in assignments. There's not much in there right now. A couple of spots where the Monte Carlo simulation, for example, could be handed in, and then the fun Monte Carlos, again, both of these were optional, so if you don't have them, it's okay. And then the orientation test folder was there as well. From now on, of course, everything will be mandatory for all students, and so anything you see after that will definitely have, you'll be expected to have submissions in there. The quizzes, of course, just takes you to the quizzes, same place as before. The mail takes you to your mail in your DSB1 mail. You may not, if you're from out of our board, you may not have this option, or when you click on it, it may not do much. I'm not too sure. But of course, if you did email me from wherever you emailed me from, I would reply to that same address. I'll mention grades and then come back to checklist here. So at any point in time, your grade, more or less as it stands, can be found in under grades. It won't always be a perfectly accurate amount. You'll have to sort of play around to understand it a little bit. But what it does show is anything that you have submitted or haven't submitted. When I assign zeros, they will appear as zeros here. If they don't have a value, then it's because it's something that either hasn't been marked yet or hasn't been assigned yet, obviously in some cases as well. Similarly, unfortunately, I can't hide these from you. I can hide them from myself, but I can't hide them from you. So if you're seeing something here that you haven't yet seen, obviously checkpoint 6.2, we haven't gotten to unit 6 yet, so you won't have marks there. That's all okay. If you're in a section where you know you should have had something in, eventually there will be zeros there, and you'll recognize, oh, I better hurry up and talk to Mr. Allen, see if he can give me a second chance or another chance at those. And similarly, assignments breakdown, tests breakdown, and so on. And then I'll try to keep these checklists fairly accurate. Essentially, they are for you to be able to keep track of what you have and haven't done. And I've set them up with the idea that what I have in here is kind of the absolute minimum for each section. Unit 2 again was a little messed up because we had so many people join late, but moving forward the units should be pretty clear. And just for your own purposes, as you complete tasks, you can kind of check them off. Did I completed this checkpoint, I submitted it, great, check it off. I read through unit 2, but oh yeah, I didn't get around to that, so I won't check it off. I did do the Monte Carlo simulation, I can check it off. And then again, it just allows you to sort of know what you have and haven't done. And if you're ever not sure, was something due, you can kind of take a look. I've got submit, anything that is expected to be submitted. Section 2.3 was basically just some questions following the content. There was nothing to submit there, so it should be pretty clear. When we get into Unit 1, what I've tried to do again is put in the absolute bare minimum work. So you need to watch the video in 1.1 and get at least those 3 questions. Those are kind of the biggest, most important questions from that section. Read through the content here and attempt the practice questions, and then submit the checkpoint there as well. And I sort of indicate here at least one attempt. Now obviously if you don't do well on your first attempt, I would assume you would make a second attempt. If you do okay, then you can leave it at that point. Similarly here in 1.2, again, this is as important a section as you'll ever see in any course. Read through the content. That was kind of the day one activity. It was read through, attempt the questions that were there, check your answers, learn on day one. On day two, I assigned problem set 1. If you don't get through them, do make sure you've looked at least, in the bare minimum, questions 1 through 5. And then same sort of thing in problem set 2. Those are the absolute key questions, mandatory questions, but the more you do, the better off you'll be. This is real math, real problem solving, and again, without trying to scare anybody off, really requires a lot of practice on your part to get good at these questions. And maybe I'll just go back to that, to section 1.2 to really stress again the intent there. So kind of last thing, just kind of reading through, day one again said watch the video, click on the video and it gives you an overview of kind of what happens down below. And then as we go through the learning, the learning using the content, my intent is just to have you read through the questions and try. How many different 4-letter words can be made using all the letters from quit? And I think about it and I'm not too sure, and it says how many options are there for the first letter? Well, there's 4. And the second letter, well, there would be 3 left over. And maybe I don't know too much about that, but it sort of gives me a chance to think about it, and then I can take a look at the answer. There are 24 different words that can be made out of those 4 letters. And essentially, it's what we were just saying. There are 4 choices for the first letter. Once one of those letters is gone, there are 3 other letters that could be the second choice, then 2 other letters left over, then 1 other letter left over after that. And then basically this shows, to do that, we multiply. And sort of a summary sentence here that's quite important. Since we need to choose a first letter and a second letter and a third letter and a fourth letter, we use what we call the product rule. So we multiply our answers, or multiply our values to find our final answer. After that, the question asks us to follow it up. What if the original question had 5 letters? What would we have? Well, we'd have that 4 times that 3 times that 2 times that 1 that was already there, but times another 5 as well. And check the answer and go through. Okay, so again, that was the intention here. It kind of goes through the whole building of the idea for one full period of kind of practice a question, check the answer, think about this, read through, learn, and then once we're comfortable with that, come back tomorrow and try some similar questions in the one practice set. As you run into problems, send them to your teacher. Send a picture of your answer, maybe a picture of the question too. And then of course, once I've given you that feedback on this is where those couple of things went wrong, the next day is practice some more. And I spread it across the weekend with the idea that hopefully I would get some questions on Friday. I could answer them on Saturday afternoon sort of thing, and you could maybe even take a look at them again on Sunday. That didn't happen. Nobody actually sent me any questions at all, but that's the idea. So just to sort of stress, like a big part of your job as a student is to ask the right questions of me so that I can then give you the feedback you require. And I'll just sort of finish with this then, since I sort of mentioned it, the right questions. I got several emails recently, and every one of them was pretty similar. They said things like, sir, I'm worried about my mark, or sir, I'm not sure what to do because I'm not doing very well. And those sorts of things are not, they're not questions really. I mean, they're comments potentially. They could be worded as a question, but the questions you should be asking should always be specific questions about parts of the content, or potentially about what you were supposed to do. Certainly I've got a couple of those as well. Does the quiz have to be done by tomorrow because there wasn't a due date on it? Fantastic question for sure. And I could answer yes and apologize, or no and apologize and say, sorry, I should have put a date on it. I was leaving it open because so many people were kind of new to the class. But if all you're going to write me is that you're worried about your mark and you don't know what to do to improve your mark, there's nothing really I can tell you. I don't know most of you as students. You haven't been in my classes before. I can't see your transcript over in the past, so I don't know whether you maybe took the grade 11 applications of functions course and got a 50, or took the 3U course and got a 95. We have people in the class likely who have done both. So whether you're going to struggle or not, I can't really comment on. But if you send me individual questions saying, I don't know how I got this wrong, even I don't know how to start this, which isn't ideal, but it certainly at least is something that I can always comment on, kind of explain a little bit more, send back. Those are the sorts of questions you have to be asking. Just saying, I'm worried about my mark, or what can I do to improve my mark, there's nothing I can answer there. I don't have an answer as to how you're going to improve your mark, unless it's just, hey, maybe do better on the next quiz, which is a ridiculous answer, I understand. But as far as I know, that, from what I've known of you, that's all I know. I don't know if you're logging in every single day like you should be. I don't know if you're putting in an hour's worth of work. I do know that nobody is kind of sending me solutions to critique or to evaluate or to reflect upon. And so I know everybody if anybody's not doing well, they should be doing that more. But that's really all I know. I don't know if if you struggled in Unit 2, I don't know if you didn't read the content, or if you didn't make notes on the content, or if you kind of read through it, forgot all of it, and then took the quiz 2 weeks later. Obviously, that's not a good situation. But again, I don't know what you're doing on your end to try to do well, so I can't comment on that, and I can't even give you ideas of how to do better. All I can do is say, if you send me questions, I can send you answers potentially. I can also get the idea from your questions possibly as to where maybe my note wasn't clear enough, or my explanation wasn't clear enough, or how you misunderstood it, so that I can correct it for other people as well. Okay, so rant kind of over there. As I said, I sort of know that I haven't necessarily been getting the feedback that I'm hoping for. As we get into this now, again, Unit 1 is really heavy math, and we're going to be using that heavy math in 2 more sections. So half of the course, more than half of the course, honestly, is going to be based on permutations and extensions on permutations. So it's absolutely imperative that you take time to learn it well. And again, you'll have to ask a lot of questions, because the questions are word problems. There's really nothing else to them. And so if you're not getting the right answers and you're not understanding where you went wrong, we really have to kind of get those problems clarified. So I'm going to stop there. Essentially, I'm going to leave this as the work for today. The work for today is watch the video. But if you haven't actually got day 1 of the permutations done, then you've got some time now to sort of do that, maybe even ask some questions. And in the next few days, I'll set up sort of a couple of times for tutorials where hopefully most people can make at least one. So good luck. Again, ask questions, good questions, whenever you can, and we'll hopefully get more comfortable with the overall idea of the course and some of these concepts that will prove to be trickier than maybe we would like. So I forgot one thing I did mean to come back to. Here under content, I've added in a resource folder, and right now there's the one link. It'll probably say something different after. I don't really want to say other resources, just general resources maybe. But here, course of study, this is a working document, so I'll just kind of open it up here. Now, what I see is a little different from what you will see. Oh, maybe not, now that I'm in as a student. So this is a working document. Again, it's not necessarily etched in stone. I may make some changes to it, but this basically gives you an idea of what's going on in the course. The course is about statistics and probability. Probability is pretty advanced math or heavy math. Statistics a little bit less so. But I've got sort of the general breakdown here, day by day, or at least unit by unit. So Unit 1, 16 days. These are the things that we'll cover. And with the understanding that at the end of the unit we will have a unit test or unit assignment, something larger that will be kind of the summative for that section. And so this is why we do have to sort of keep up the pace. Everybody has to be done Unit 1 at the end of Unit 1, because if you just sort of run through the days here, I sort of have 16 days approximately, 8 days for organizing data Unit 2, but of course we took a lot longer than that to get through Unit 2 just because we had so many people join the course late. 14 days for Unit 3, 16, 12, and 8, and then probably about 10 days I have set aside for culminating activities in the exam. And that, I think if I add those up, it works out to about 84 days, and we have anywhere between 85 and 90 days, depending on snow days and different things. Now, snow days, of course, shouldn't affect us because we are asynchronous, so the work will be there, posted the same as always. But just sort of know that the amount of time scheduled and the amount of time we have is pretty similar, and so we can't just take our time to get through this. The course is one semester long, and so by the end of January, you will be done. And then the last thing, I sort of put this in and just wanted to point it out. Assessment will be pretty much checkpoints 10 to 15%. Assignments 15 to 20%. Now again, just depending on whether I call something an assignment or I make it slightly bigger and slide it into the unit test sort of area, some of these numbers will bounce around a touch, but we have the basic idea that checkpoint quizzes will be fairly low, assignments will be a little bit bigger, and unit summatives will be a little bit bigger again. And then we will have a final exam of some sort. Now again, final exam, because it's online, because it's not supervised, you could call that your final exam assignment or something potentially, because it will be open book, but it will be timed as well. So you'll sort of have an afternoon to complete it and then submit it. Anything that's not submitted on time will be deemed late, and so on. And then a 10% culminating assignment project sort of thing that's smaller but still of some value. So that was the one thing I did mean to come back to, was just sort of pointing that out, and I sort of referenced it, I guess, when I said the checkpoint quizzes were not worth a lot. If we had looked at the checkpoint quiz or the quiz list here, you might see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There's about 18, maybe 19 different checkpoint quizzes, and so again, they'd probably be worth about 1% each. So getting a good mark on them is not the most important thing, but understanding the concepts will be. So again, please, when you do make your attempt, make that first attempt, and then take the time to sort of ask about why you got something wrong if it's not clear. Obviously, if you misclicked and you thought, oh, I meant to hit that button and I hit this one, that's fine. If you look at your solution and realize you mistyped it, that's fine. But if you actually don't understand why the answer is whatever I'm suggesting it is, then please take the time to answer or to verify. Okay, so this time for real, I'm going to stop, and hopefully I'll talk to you sometime soon.